Hi everybody, welcome to GTCoding. This is the full video of our one-page design course, and I have compiled all the videos in the series into this one long video. So in this video we are designing this one-page website from scratch using HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and we'll also learn how to use a library in our website. And at the end I'll also show you how to host this website online so that everyone can visit your website. These are the sections that this video is divided into. You can find the timestamps in the description of the video. So I hope you find this video useful, and make sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already so that you will get the notifications of my videos. And if you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments below. So let's get started. We are starting a series where we are converting this one-page design in Figma to a real website. So first of all, let me show you a demo of the website. Here we have the hero section right here, and if you scroll down, we have our clients section where we can display our clients, and then we have the about section. We have an image right here, and then we have the our projects section, and this is some of our projects right here. And if the visitor clicks on this view all button, we can take him to our Behance page or Dribble page or Instagram or something like that. And then we have the testimonials section, and we'll be having a slider over here. So we'll have 3 testimonials, and we can access all of them using these next and previous buttons. And then we have the contact us section, and lastly we have the footer. So the footer is also divided into different columns. We have the logo right here, and then we have 3 columns right here. And we also have the names and the images of the other 2 people in the testimonials. And then let me show you the mobile version. So this is the mobile version, and in the mobile version we don't have the image in our hero section. We just have the heading and these buttons, and we have added a menu button over here, and when we click on that we'll get all the menu items. And then we have the our clients section, and we have broken the line into 2. And then we have the about us section. We have the text on the top, and then we have the image at the bottom. And then we have the our project section, and all the images are stacked one below the other. And then we have the testimonial section, and we have changed the layout of the testimonials as well. And then we have the contact us section, and all the fields are one below the other. And lastly we have the footer, and we also have a different layout over here. So this is the demo of our design. Let me show you a brief demo of the actual website. We have a little bit of animation going on over here in the hero section. So if you refresh our page, we can see that all the elements build up, and we can see that the navigation menu stays fixed, and we can click on any of these sections right here. So if I click on our projects, we'll go to the our project section, and we also have the active class changing. So we have the underline right here, and if we scroll down, we have the underline change to the testimonial section. So we know that this section is active. And in the testimonial section you can just click on the next button to go to the next testimonial, and you can even click on these dots right here. This is the mobile version, and everything is just as we saw in the Figma design. And we can click on this menu button right here, and we get all the menu items. We can just click on any of these sections, and we go to that section. So first of all, the code editor that I'm going to be using in this series is called VS Code, which is Visual Studio Code. It is free to download, and you can download it from code.visualstudio.com. It has a lot of awesome features and a lot of extensions which you can use. So just go ahead and click on this download button and install it just like all the other applications. I have created this folder called one page website, and if you have VS Code installed, you can just right click over here and then click on open with code, and your project will be opened in VS Code. Or you can even click on file and go to open folder, and you can open the project from there. I will create the three necessary files that we want for our website: the index.html file, the style.css file, and a JavaScript file. You can create a new file by just clicking on this button called New File, and we'll just name the file index.html, and I'll just create style.css file and also a main.js file. Let's go to the index.html file. Emmet is a tool which can be used to write HTML quickly, so it has a lot of snippets in that, and VS Code has Emmet already installed, so we can just type exclamation and then press tab, and you'll get this HTML5 boilerplate code. I also have a separate video on Emmet on how to use the shortcuts of Emmet. You can watch that. I'll leave the link in the description below. Alright, so let's go ahead and link our style.css file. So we'll just type link and then press tab, and in the href we'll just type style.css, and we'll also link our JavaScript file. So let's go inside the body, and here we'll type script :src and press tab, and in here we can just type main.js. So we have created the HTML file and we have linked our style.css and the main.js files. Now let's go back to the browser and let's open fonts.google.com, and we'll select the fonts that we are going to be using in our website. So the fonts that we're going to be using in our website are Montserrat and Roboto. So let's just type Montserrat, and we'll just select this font, and we'll just be using the extra bold style of this font. So let's scroll down, and this is the extra bold. So let's select this style, and the other font we're going to be using is Roboto. So let's go back and type Roboto, and we'll be using two styles for Roboto. So let's select that, and we'll select the regular style and also the bold style. So these are the fonts we are going to be using: Montserrat extra bold and Roboto regular 400 and bold 700. Now to embed these fonts into our website, you have to go to embed, and here you have two options of adding the font to your website. You can just add a link in your HTML head tag, or you can even import the font inside your style.css file. Both of these methods are fine, so I'll just select link and copy this link from here, and we'll just go to index.html and we'll paste this line of code right here. So here we can see Montserrat and Roboto fonts are selected. Now for the colors in our website, I have used this website called coolors.co. You can just click on start the generator and then press space on your keyboard, and different colors will be selected. You can lock any of these colors and then press space, and the other colors will be changed. So in this way I found a color scheme and that we're going to be using in our website. You can even go ahead and click on explore, and here are some of the trending colors that are being used in different websites. You can take a look at this as well. These are the 4 colors that we're going to be using in our website. So let's add these to our CSS file. So let's select the first one, and let's copy this code from here, and we'll open the style.css file, and we'll use CSS variables to add the colors. So I'll just add a comment, and for this we'll just target the root element. So we'll just type :root. Now the variables that we're going to create can be accessed by all the other elements. To create a CSS variable, you have to type --, and the name of the variable. So we'll just type dark-color, and we can add the color right here. So I'll just select the dark one and copy this code from here and paste it right here. And in the same way we'll just do with the light color, and we'll select this color and copy this code and paste it right here. And now the red color, so we'll select this color and copy this code and paste it over here. And then the cyan color, and select this color, copy this code and paste it over here. Now we'll add two more colors over here for the hover effects. So red hover color, and it'll be BE0732, and then cyan hover color, and it would be 6AF3E1. And that's it with the colors. Now the last thing I will show you in this video is how to create PNG and SVG files from Figma. So let's open our design. One thing you should always keep in your mind is that whenever you have a chance of exporting as an SVG, you should always do that. So let me just give you an example. I'll just select this shape from here, and then we'll go down to export and just click on preview, and you can preview the file that we're going to be exporting. Now here you have to select SVG instead of PNG or JPG because this is a shape file, and then click on export polygon, and this is our project folder. Let's go ahead and create a new folder called images, and you can just name the file whatever you want. So I'll just name it polygon, and then click on save. And now if you go to the folder, we can see that inside images we have the polygon. So in this way, just select all these images and go to export and select SVG or PNG, and then click on export and give the names. Now for files like this where we have the logos of different companies, you may not be able to save it as SVG, so just save them as PNG. These images right here, so these can be saved only as PNG. And just do this with all the other images in our Figma file, and then we can continue with our design. I'll leave the link of the Figma file in the description below so that you can just try and export all the images. First of all, let's plan how to write the markup of this design. First thing we'll do is we'll create a wrapper division to hold everything, and then we'll create a division called desktop nav for this navigation menu. That's because we'll be having a mobile navigation as well, so we'll have to create two navigation menus. And then we'll create a division with a name like hero container or something, and we'll have two divisions in that, one for the left part and one for the right part, which is the image. So with that said, let's go to our code editor, VS Code, and this is where we are right now. We have already linked our CSS file and our main.js file, and we have also added the link of our Google fonts. So let's go ahead and start with the header. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a division with the class of wrapper. Now since VS Code has emmet already installed, we can just type dot wrapper and then press tab, and it will create a division with the class of wrapper. And in the wrapper division, we will create a nav with the class of desktop nav. And let's see what do we have in the nav. So here we can see we have the logo, and then the menu icons, and then we also have this button. So we'll create a division with the class of logo, and in that we'll place the logo. Now before that, let me show you that I have exported all the images from Figma. So these are all the images, and if you haven't done that already, you have to do it because we will need those images in our design. And I have also shown you how to do this in the previous video, and I also gave a link of the Figma file, so you can download the file and go ahead and export these images out. So let's go ahead and add the image right here, but before that, let's add an anchor tag so that when we click on the image, we want to go to the top of our web page. Now for the href, I'll just type hash, and in the anchor tag we'll just type img tab, and in the sources we'll just type images slash, and I have given the name logo.svg for the logo. Alright, that's it with the logo. Now let's go ahead and create the unordered list for the menu items. So we'll just type ul for unordered list, and we'll give the class of menu items, and in that we'll have some list items, and in the list item we will have an anchor tag. For now, I'll just type hash over here. Later we'll change the href so that it will navigate to the correct section. So the first one in our menu item is about. So I'll type about over here, and I'll just copy this list item And we have 4 menu items, so let me just copy this 3 more times. And then we have our projects, testimonials, and contact. And for the first one, we have this underline over here, so that is basically a class that we are adding in our CSS. So we'll just add that class over here for the first menu item. So we'll add a class of active. And lastly, we need to have the button. So we have this get started button. So for the button also we'll have the same list item and anchor tag. And we'll give a class called button for this, which will style using CSS. And here we'll type get started. So that's basically it with the desktop navigation. Now I have this extension called live server. So if you go to extensions and search for live server, you can find it over here, and just install that, so that you can just right click over here and click on open with live server. Now this tab will refresh every time you hit save on VS Code. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we need to add the hero section. So here I will just add a comment. To add a comment, you can just press Ctrl plus / and then you can type whatever comment you want. So I'll just type end of desktop navigation. Alright, now let's go ahead and start with the hero section. So for that we'll create a header element and we'll give it a class of hero container. And we'll divide the header into 2 sections, one for these 3 elements, welcome to and the heading and these 2 buttons, and the other for this image. So for the left one, we'll just give it a class of left, and that will create a paragraph, and we'll type welcome to. And for this heading we will have an h1, so just type h1, and we'll just type GT web design. And here we can see GT is colored red, so we have to give it a specific class so that we can style using CSS and give it a color of red. So for GT we will create a span and we'll give it a class of GT, and we will have the ending tag after GT. So now we have added a span with the class of GT, and now we'll be able to target GT class in our style.css file, and then we'll be able to change the color of GT. Now we have not added a division over here. That is because if we add a division, it will break this into 2 lines, so GT will be on a separate line, so that's why we didn't use any division. Span is an inline element, so it doesn't break the line. Now next we have 2 buttons, so we'll have an anchor tag with a class of button, and we'll just type hash for the href, and inside the anchor tag we'll just type get started. And then we have one more button called learn more, so I'll just duplicate this, and here I will just type learn more. Now this button has a different color, so we will add one more class over here so that we can target that using CSS. Cyan, so this button will have the cyan color. Now that's it with the left part of our hero container. Now let's move to the right part. Now in the right we just have an image, so I'll just type img, and for the source we'll type images/hero image. So this is the name that I've given for the image. So let's go to our web page, and this is how it looks. Now the last thing to do is we need to add these polygons and this shape right here. So let's go over here, and we'll just type img tab, and in sources we'll type images/hero bg. This is the name that I've given for the hero background. So here we can see that the image is being loaded. Now we need to add the polygons as well, so we'll create a polygon container division, and in that we'll add all the polygon images. So I'll just type img images/polygon, and I'll just duplicate this 2 more times, and then we have polygon 2 and polygon 3. We'll also give different classes to these polygons so that we can style them differently. So for the first one, we'll just give it a class of polygon, and I'll just copy this. And for the second one, we'll give it a class of polygon 2, and for the third one, we'll give it a class of polygon 3. So that's basically it with the hero section and the navigation menu of our website. So let's go ahead and add a comment, end of hero section. Now let's go to our web page and see whether everything is working all right. So everything seems to be working. This is our HTML. Now we have already linked our style.css file in our HTML. So let's go to style.css, and we already have the colors all set up. First of all, let's go ahead and add a universal selector. So this selector will select every element in our web page, and we will set the margin of every element to 0 so that we don't have any default margin for any element. And after that, we'll set the box sizing to border box. Now this line of code makes sure that the height and the width of our element includes the padding and the border, so that we don't have any confusion when we calculate the width and the height of our element. I have a dedicated video on box model. You can watch that. I will leave the link in the description below. Alright, now the next thing we'll do is we'll set the font of our website. So we'll just set the font family to Roboto Sans Serif. We have already linked our Google Fonts in our HTML. So here we can see that. Now the next thing we'll style is the wrapper. So the wrapper is the container division of everything. This is the wrapper division. So let's go to our Figma file and see what are the properties of this element. If you click on this home page frame, we can see the width of this frame is 1152. So we'll set the width of our wrapper to 1152. And we will center everything. So we'll just type margin 0 for top and bottom and auto for left and right, so that it will be centered. Now we need to calculate the space between the edge of our frame and this navigation element. So let's double click on the navigation menu, and now just press Alt and then hover over this area, and we can see that the space between the edge of the frame and this nav element is 100. So let's go over here and set a padding. So we'll set the padding of 0 for top and bottom, and for left and right we will set a padding of 100 pixels. So now the first thing we'll style is the navigation bar. So let's go over here and we'll just add a comment, and we'll target the element called desktop nav. So this is the nav element. Now the first thing we'll do is we will set the display to flex, and now we can see that we have the logo on the left and the menu items on the right. Now let's set the spacing in between these two elements. So we'll just type justify content space between. Now we can see we have the logo on the left and the menu items on the right. We also need to set the display of the menu items to flex so that all the elements will be one next to the other. So here we'll just type desktop nav menu items, and we'll set the display to flex, and we'll also remove these bullets. So for that we can just type list style and we'll set it to none. Now the next thing to do is we have to set some spacing between these list items. So let's go to our Figma file and let's see what is the spacing. Double click over here and double click once more, and now if you press Alt and just hover over the other element, we can see that we have a spacing in between them of 40 pixels. So let's go to our style.css and let's target the list items. So here we will just type desktop nav menu items li, and we'll give a margin of 0 for top and bottom, and for the left and right we'll give a margin of 20 pixels. Now we are giving 20 pixels of left and right margin, because if you take a look at this, we have a margin of 20 pixels for the right of about and 20 pixels for the left of our projects. So in total we have 40 pixels of spacing. Now let's style the anchor tags. So you'll just type desktop nav menu items li a. First of all, we'll get rid of the underline, so we'll just type text decoration to none, and now we don't have the underlines. And then we'll set the color of the text. So the color of the text is the dark color that we had set in our CSS. So if we scroll up, we can see the dark color is this color right here, but we have already added a variable called dark color, so we can directly access that over here. Now to use a variable in CSS, you have to type var, and inside parentheses you can type hyphen hyphen and the name of the variable. So it is dark color. So the dark color has been set for the text, and we need to set the size of our font to 16 pixels. So let's just type font size 16 pixels, and we'll also set the font weight to bold. Now let's go back to styling our desktop nav division. So let's scroll up and let's continue styling this. Here we can see that all these menu items are not centered vertically, so we can just type align items to center, and now we can see that they are centered. And we'll set the background color of the desktop nav to light color. So background var light color. Now let's go to the Figma file, and we can see that we have rounded corners and also box shadow. So let's double click on this, and let's select the rectangle. So I think this is the one, and let's go to code, and here we can see some of the styling. So let's copy these two styles from here, and we'll paste them over here. This is how it looks. Now let's see what is the padding that we need to give. So let's double click over here on the logo and press Alt and hover over this area, and we can see that we have a spacing of 31 pixels. I think we'll just round it to 30 pixels. So let's go over here and we'll type padding, and for the top and bottom we'll give a padding of 2 pixels, and for left and right 30 pixels. Now the next thing to do is we have to set the position of this desktop nav to fixed, so that even if we scroll down, the desktop nav will be right there on the top. So we will set the position to fixed, and we'll also set the z index to 200, so that it will always be on top of all the other elements. Now since we set the position of the desktop nav to fixed, we have some issues with the width of our element. So let's go over here and set the width. So the width will be 1152, which is the width of the wrapper, minus 200 pixels, because if you go to the Figma file, we can see that here we have 100 pixels of padding, and on the right also we have 100 pixels of padding. So the width of our nav element will be 1156, which is the width of the frame, minus 200. So for that we can use a function in CSS called calc, and then we can just type 1152 pixels minus 200 pixels. So now we can see that it has the correct width. Now let's see how far it is from the top. So if we hover over this, we can see that we have 28 pixels of spacing on the top. So here we can just type top 28 pixels. Now we can see that it is styled correctly. Now we need to style this button right here. So let's go back to our CSS, and here we'll just type a.btn. So if you go to the HTML, we can see for the button we have given a class of btn. So let's style that over here. The background color of the button will be red. So we'll type var hyphen red color. And we need to change the color of the text to light color. So we'll type color var light color. And I think we need to specifically set the color of the button in our desktop nav. So we'll just type desktop nav menu items lia.btn, and we'll just paste this line of code. Now let's go back to our Figma file, and let's double click over here, and here we can see we have a border radius of 24 pixels. So let's copy this, and we'll paste it over here. And we also need to give a padding. So if we hover over this, we can see that we have a padding of 30 for left and right and 14 for top and bottom. So here we will just type padding 14 for top and bottom and 30 for left and right. Now our button is styled correctly, but we have to move it to the extreme right of our desktop nav. So let's go back to our style.css, and here we can see for the list item we have given a margin of 0 for top and bottom and 20 pixels for left and right. So we need to remove the right margin of the last element. So we can just type desktop nav menu items li. To select the last item, we can just type :nth last of type, and we can just type 1. So this will select the last element, and we will set the margin right to 0, and we still have a little bit of spacing on the right. So if you go back to the style.css, we can see for the desktop nav we have given a padding of 30 pixels for left and right. So we need to remove the padding right, so we'll just type padding right of 0. Now it is styled correctly. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll style the active class. So if you go back to Figma, we can see under about we have this rectangle, and it has a height of 3 pixels, and this will be below any menu that is active. So if you go to our HTML, we have set the first menu item, that is about, to active. So let's style that. We'll go over here and we'll just type desktop nav menu items lia dot active. Now we'll use an after element for the design, so we'll just type : after. Now let me show you what an after element does. So if you just type content hello, and if you go to our web page, we can see that after about we have hello displayed over here. So in this way we can add extra information to our element using the after element. Now we don't want to display any word, so we'll just delete hello from here, but the content property is required for the after element, so we'll just keep it blank. And we need to set the position of the after element based on the anchor tag. So first of all, we'll set the position of the anchor tag to relative, and then here we can type position absolute. We saw that the height of the element was 3 pixels, and we'll keep the width to 100% of the anchor tag, and we'll also set a background color of var red color. So if you go back to our web page, we can see that this is the element. Now we need to bring it down and to the left. So we'll type left 0 and bottom, and I think -14 pixels is the perfect bottom position. And now we can see that the active class is working alright. That's pretty much it with the navigation menu. Now let's go ahead and style the hero container. So if you go to the HTML, we can see we have this element header with a class of hero container. We have a typo over here. We'll just fix that. Alright, now let's go ahead and style the hero container. So here we'll just type hero section. Now the height will be set to 100% of the desktop viewport. So we'll just type height of 100 VH, and we'll set the display to flex so that we have the left and the right parts one next to the other. So display to flex. Now the problem we have over here is that this hero BG and these polygons are all inside the hero container. So when we set the display to flex, everything was set one next to the other. Now for styling this, we'll first of all hide these two elements, the polygons and the hero BG. So if you go to the HTML, this is the hero BG image. Let's give it a class of hero BG, and here we'll type hero bg, and we'll just set the display to none, and we'll do the same with the polygon container. Now we can style these elements correctly. So first of all, we will center them vertically. So here we'll just type align items to the center. Now we'll position them one to the extreme left and one to the extreme right. So we'll just type justify content to space between. Now first let's style the paragraph. So if you go to Figma and double click over here, and we can see we have the font family of Roboto and font size of 24 pixels. So we'll just copy this, and here we'll just type hero container left P and font size of 24 pixels. Alright, now let's see the styling of the heading. For the heading we have font family of Montserrat and font weight of bold, and then we have font size of 36. Let's go ahead and style the H1. We'll set the font family to Montserrat sans serif. Now let's give some spacing between the button and this heading. So here we will just type margin of 8 pixels for top, 0 for right, 28 pixels for bottom, and 0 for the left. Now let's set the color of GT to red. If you remember, in our HTML we had set a span and we had given it a class of GT so that we can style it separately. So we'll use that over here. We'll type hero container left GT, and we'll set the color to var red color. Now let's also remove the underlines from these buttons. So we'll go over here to the BTN class and we'll type text decoration to none. Now if you go to Figma, we can see that the second button has a cyan color. So if we go to our HTML, we had already given a class of cyan to this button. So let's target that class over here. We'll just type a dot button dot cyan. So this will target all the buttons with the cyan class, and we'll give it a background color of var cyan color, and the color of the text to var dark color, and we'll also set the font weight to bold. So here we'll just type font weight bold. Now if you go to the Figma design, we can see that we have a spacing between these two buttons. Let's see what is the spacing, and we can see we have a spacing of 20 pixels. So let's go over here to our left BTN. Here we'll just type hero container left BTN, and we'll give it a margin right of 20 pixels. Now let's give a little bit of padding to this image. So we'll just go over here and we'll target the right division, hero container right, and we'll give a padding right of 30 pixels. Now the design is almost complete. Now let's also style the hero BG and the polygons. So here we have hero BG. Alright, so for hero BG we will set the position to absolute, and we'll set the bottom to 0 and the left to 0, and we'll also set the width to 100% and also set the z index to -1 so that it will be below all the other elements. And there we can see our hero BG is placed correctly. Now let's also style the polygons. So we'll go over here and we'll just delete this, and we'll target each of the polygons separately. So we'll type hero container polygon, and for the first polygon we'll set the position to absolute. For this also we'll set the z index to -1. We'll set the top to 100 pixels and left to 240 pixels. You can play around with these values and get the exact position you want. So here is our first polygon. Let's copy this and paste it 2 more times. and this is the second polygon. For the second one, we will set the top to 180 pixels and left to 480 pixels. And for the polygon 3, we'll set the top to 300 pixels and the left to 540 pixels. Now for the left division, which is this paragraph heading and these buttons, we'll take as much width as we can so that this image will be shifted on the right. So for that, you can just go over here and target the left division, hero container left, and we'll set the flex to 1 so that it will take all the possible space it can. And now we can see that the image is shifted to the right. Now lastly, we will set the hover color of these buttons so that when you hover over these, we have a little different color. So let's go back to our style.css and we'll go over here where we have designed all our buttons, and we'll type a.btn:hover, and when we hover, we can set a background color that we have already set over here in our variables, red hover color and cyan hover color. So we'll type var red hover color, and for the hover of the cyan button, we'll type button.cyan hover background of var cyan hover color. And we'll also give a transition so that it will have the smooth animation. So we'll type transition of background color to 400 milliseconds. So now if you hover over these, we have different colors when we hover over these buttons. This is our CSS. Now let's go ahead and create a comment, and we'll just type animation, and let's start with the animation. The first thing we'll do is we'll animate this navigation bar, and we'll bring it from the top. That's the first thing we'll animate. So let's go ahead and target the desktop nav class, and for adding an animation, you have to type animation and then type the name of the animation. So we'll just name the animation fade down, and we haven't created it yet, but we'll just type the name, and then we can type the duration of the animation. So we'll just set it to 1000 milliseconds, and in the beginning the opacity will be 0, and then we will animate it to have the opacity of 1. So to create an animation called fade down, we have to type at keyframes and then type the name. So we'll just type fade down, and here we can type percentages. So we can type 0%, and what should happen at 0%, and then 75%, 78%, whatever you want. Now for 0%, you can even type from, and it is considered as 0, and then we can type 2 for 100%. So for the from, we will set the opacity to 0. So at the beginning the opacity will be 0, and we will move it a little upward. So we'll just type transform, and then we can type translate y, and then set the value to say -20 pixels, and inside 2 we can just type opacity of 1 and transform to translate y 0. Alright, that's with the animation of the desktop. Now let's go ahead and see whether it works. So at the beginning we don't have any animation, and when we reload this page, we can see that the animation is happening. But right after the animation ends, we can see that it goes back to the initial state. So for that, we can add a new value over here called forwards, so it stays at the end position. So let's go ahead and refresh this page, and we can see that the animation is working all right. Now the next thing we'll animate is this paragraph right here. So let's go ahead and here we will type hero container left p, and we'll create an animation, and we'll name it fade in, and we'll set the duration to 800 milliseconds, and we'll set this also to forwards, and in the beginning we'll set the opacity to 0. Alright, so let's go ahead and create the fade in animation. So we'll type at keyframes fade in, and we can see that by default opacity is 0, so we can directly type 2 and set the opacity to 1. So it will start from opacity 0 to opacity 1. So let's go ahead and test it out. We can see that the animation is working alright. Now we want this animation to happen a little late after the desktop nav animation. So we can set an animation delay to our paragraph. So he will just type animation delay, and we'll set the animation delay to 400 milliseconds. So now let's go ahead and refresh our page, and we can see that the animation is working perfectly. Now let's set the animation for this heading. So let's go ahead and type hero container left h1, and we'll create an animation with the name of fade to right, and we'll set the duration to 800 milliseconds and forwards. Now you can even set a transition curve to the animation so that it will behave in a certain way. So if you set the transition curve to linear, then it will start with the same speed and end with the same speed. We can mess around with the speed and create our own values. So for that, I've just created a cubic Bezier function. So I'll just type cubic Bezier, and in here I have just found the values of 0.22, 0.32, 0 and 1.54. And for this also we'll just set the opacity to 0, and we'll set the animation delay to 800 milliseconds. Right, so let's create the fade to right animation. Keyframes fade to right. From opacity 0, we will fade it from the left, so we'll just type transform translate x, and we'll set it to negative 100 pixels. And we'll just copy this and paste it over here. We'll just change this to 2 and set the opacity to 1, set the translate value to 0. Alright, so let's go ahead and test the animation. Let's refresh our page. And we can see that the animation is working alright. If you're confused about the cubic Bezier function, you can just go ahead and right click over here in Chrome and click on inspect. And if you go over here and scroll down to the styles, we can see this button here called Open Cubic Bezier Editor. You can just go ahead and click on that button, and here you can find a visual representation of the cubic Bezier function. So you can just go ahead and play with these values, and once you like it, you can just go ahead and copy this line of code to your CSS. So this is how you can edit the cubic Bezier function. Now for these two buttons, we will have the fade in animation that we had given to the paragraph. So we'll just reuse that animation. So let's go ahead and type hero container left and btn. We will have different animation delays for different buttons. So for that, we'll just select the first button by typing colon nth of type 1. This will select the first button, and we'll set the animation to fade in, which we have already created. If you scroll up, we can see that this is the fade in animation, so we can just use that directly over here. And we'll set the duration to 1000 milliseconds and forwards. We'll set the opacity to 0 and animation delay to 1400 milliseconds. Now I'll just copy this for the second button, and here we will type 2, and everything will be same except the animation delay. The animation delay will be set to 1600 milliseconds. Alright, that's it with the animation of the buttons. Let's go ahead and refresh our page, and we can see that everything is working alright. Now let's animate this image right here on the right. So here we'll just type hero container right, and we'll create an animation named fade to left, and we'll set the duration to 1200 milliseconds and forwards. We'll set the opacity to 0 initially, and animation delay to 900 milliseconds. Alright, let's create the animation. Keyframes fade to left, opacity 0, which is already written over here, transform, translate X, and we'll set the transform to 30 pixels. And then for 2 we will type opacity 1 and transform, translate X of 0. Alright, so let's see whether it works alright. And we can see all the animations are working alright. The last animation we are going to add is for the polygons. We will add an animation where it will rotate infinitely. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll target all the polygons. So we'll type hero container, polygon, comma hero container, polygon 2, comma hero container, polygon 3, and we'll set the opacity to 0. And one more thing you need to remember over here is that you need to add 2 animations for these polygons. The first one is for the fade in animation where it will appear, and then the second animation for the rotation. So the first animation, that is the fade in animation, will run for one time, and then the rotate animation will run infinitely. So for that you have to type animation name, and we have to type 2 values over here. The first one is fade in, which is the first animation, and the second animation that we're going to create is called rotate. Right, for the first animation we will have a duration of 800 milliseconds, and for the second animation we will have a duration of 80 seconds, and the animation delay for both the animations will be 1800 milliseconds. And then we can have the animation iteration count. It will determine how many times the animation will run. So we'll type animation iteration count. The first animation fade in will run one time, and rotate animation will run infinitely. And we'll set the animation fill mode. It will be forwards. This is just a detailed version of what we wrote over here in one line. Alright, lastly we have the animation timing function. For the first one we will set it to ease in, and for the second one we will set it to linear. Alright, now the fade in animation has already been created. So let's create the rotate animation. So we'll type at keyframes rotate, and we'll type from transform rotate 360 degrees to transform rotate 0 degrees. So that's it with the animation of the polygons. Let's go ahead and test it out. After the end of the hero section, let's go ahead and start with a new division with the class of brands section. And in that we'll have a heading 2 for our clients. So I'll type h2 and our clients, and then we'll have a division called brands container to contain all these logos of the brands. So let's type brands container, and in this we'll add all the logos. So we'll type images slash Microsoft logo dot png, and we have 5 logos in total. So let me just duplicate this 4 more times, and the second one is Google, and then we have Netflix, Unity, and Amazon. So let's just type Netflix logo, Unity logo, and Amazon. So that is basically it with the brands section. So let's give a comment, end of brands section, and let's go to our web page and see how it looks right now. So here we have our brands section, we have the heading and all the logos over here. Now let's go to our style.css and let's style this brands section. We'll add a comment. Now let's target the division with the class of brands section. So I'll type brands section over here, and let's go to our Figma file and let's select the rectangle. So this is the rectangle right here, and let's go to code and see whether we have any styles. And we can see that the background color is the light color that we have set as a variable in CSS. And then we have a box shadow and border radius. So let's copy these two lines of code and we'll paste them over here. And for the background color, we'll just add the variable light color. And let's see what is the padding we have. So let's hover over this, and we can see that we have a padding of 32 pixels on the top. So let's give a padding of 32 pixels top and bottom, and we'll just give a padding of 50 pixels left and right. And if we hover over this, we can see that we have a margin top of 100 pixels. So we have a spacing of 100 pixels from the header to this brand section. So let's add a margin top of 100 pixels. So let's go back to our web page, and this is how it looks right now. Now let's go to the Figma file and see what is the height of these images. So let's double click over here, and we can see that the height is 32 pixels. So first of all, let's set the height of the images to 32 pixels. So we'll type brands section, brands container, img, and we'll set a height of 32 pixels. So all our images have now a height of 32 pixels. Now we need to place all these images evenly spaced. So for that, let's go to brands section, brands container, and we'll set the display to flex and justify content to space between. And we can see now that everything is spaced correctly. We'll also center it horizontally. So we'll just type align items to center. Alright, now we can style the heading. First of all, let's add some content below the brand section so that we can see it properly. So we'll just add a couple of heading tags. Alright, now we can see the brand section properly. Now let's style the heading. So let's go to style.css, and we will type brands section h2, and let's go over here to the Figma file, and let's select this. We can see that the font size is 32 pixels and the font family is Montserrat. So let's add them to our code. Font family Montserrat, sans serif, and font size of 32 pixels. And what else do we have? We have a margin bottom of 48 pixels. So we can see we have a spacing of 48 pixels between the logos and the heading. And the color is set to the dark color. So let's add those. Color var dark color, and margin bottom of 48 pixels. Now we'll also center it. So we'll type text align to center. Now the next thing we need to style is the underline that we have after the heading. So if you go to the Figma file, we can see that we have this underline after each heading, and we have a width of 43 pixels and a height of 3 pixels. So for this we will use the after selector, just like we used in the navigation. We can see for the active navigation we have used the after element, and in this way we have added the underline for the navigation. So here we can see under about we have this underline. So in the same way we will add the after element for the brands section heading. So let's type brands section h2 : after, and content will be blank, and we have width and height of 43 and 3 pixels. Now we want to position this underline relative to the heading. So here in the heading we can type position relative, and then here we can type position absolute, and we'll set a background color of red, and we can see the underline right here. Let's bring it down. So we'll set a top position of 40 pixels, and we will bring it to the left. So we will add a translate x to minus 43 pixels because we have a width of 43. So that's it with the brand section of our website. Here we are in the HTML of our website. So let's go ahead and delete all these H1s, and let's create a section, and we'll get a class of about section, and in this we will have an h2 and we'll type about us. Now let's add the content of the about us section. So here we'll create a division with a class of about description, and in that we'll have two paragraphs. So we'll just copy this text from here and we'll paste it here on the first paragraph, and we'll create one more paragraph and we'll paste this text. And then we have this image here on the right. So for that, let's go ahead and add the img tag. So outside the about description division, we will have an img tag, and for the source we will type images/about.png. This is the name that I've given for the about image. So that's basically it with the about us section. So let's go over here and give a comment end of about us section, and we'll also create a section for the projects. So here let's type section, and we'll give it a class of projects section, and in that we'll have a heading and we'll type our projects, and then we'll create a division with the class of projects gallery, and in that we'll have all the images of our projects. So we'll type img and images/project1.png, and we have 6 projects over here. So let me just duplicate this 5 more times, and we'll type project 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then we also have a button for view all. So outside our projects gallery division, we'll create an anchor tag, and we'll just type hash over here, and then for the class we'll just type btn and cyan, and in here we'll type view all, and that's the end of the project section. So we'll just type a comment end of the projects section. Now let's go to our website and see how it looks. So if we scroll down, we can see that the about section and the our projects section, and the button is already styled because we had styled it here in the hero section, and we want the same styling that we have in the heading of the our client section to the heading of these sections as well. So let's go to our CSS, and here we can see that for brand section h2 we had given this style. So let's add the section heading as well. So we'll type section h2 and we'll add a comma over here, and even for the after we will type section h2 after. So this should give us the same styling as the our client section. So here we can see about us and our projects are styled correctly. Now first of all, let's set some styling for the paragraph. So if you go over here to the Figma file, and if we double click over here, and here we can see that for the text we have a size of 16 pixels, and for the line height we have 32 pixels. So the line height is double the size of the text. So let's go over here and we'll just add some global styles. So we'll go over here on the top, and here we will type paragraph, and we'll set the line height to 2, which is twice the font size, and we'll also set a margin bottom of 20 pixels. And then if you go over here and if we hover over this section and this second section, we can see that we have a gap of 100 pixels. So let's set a padding top of 100 pixels for all the sections. So here we'll type padding top 100 pixels. And also for the color of all the paragraphs inside sections, we will set the dark color. So we'll type color var dark color. Right now in the about section, we have to set this text on the left and the image on the right. So we can use display flex for this. Now if you go to the index.html file, we can see that we have this h2 over here, and then we have this division called about description, and then we also have this image. So if we set the display to flex, then this heading will be here on the left, and then we'll have this content, and then we'll have the image on the right. So let's go over here and add a new division with the class of section content, and we will add the about description and the image inside this section content. Alright, so now let's go to our style.css and we'll style this section content. So we'll tap about section, section content, and we'll set a display to flex and also align items to the center, and we'll also add some spacing between this text and the image. So let's go to our Figma file and let's hover over this, and we have a spacing of 102. Let's round it to 100 pixels. So let's go to our style.css and here we'll type about section, section content img, and we'll set a margin left of 100 pixels. So we have styled the about section. Now let's move on to the our project section, and let's go to our CSS, and here we'll type project section. So let's type projects gallery. So here we can see we have given a class called projects gallery for all these images, and we will set the display to grid. Now we can see that all the images are lined up one below the other. Now we can set a grid template columns so that we can choose how many images will be in one row. So here you have to type grid template columns, and we'll set it to 1fr, 1fr, 1fr. So here you can see we have 3 images in a row, and we will set a gap between these images. So let's go to our Figma file and let's double click over here, and here we can see we have a gap of 18 pixels, and here we have a gap of 40 pixels. So let's go to our CSS and we'll give a grid gap of 18 pixels. Now we have a gap of 18 pixels for the columns as well as rows. Now for each of the rows we should have a gap of 40. So here we can type grid gap of 40 pixels and 18 pixels. So now we have the correct gap. Now let's go back to our Figma file and let's see what is the spacing between the button and these images. So we have a spacing of 42 pixels. So let's go to CSS and here we will type margin bottom of 42 pixels. Now let's go to our website and see whether everything is working alright. So the Our Project section is working alright. Let's also set the width of the images to 100% so that even if you have an image with a smaller width, it should be placed perfectly, and we'll also set object fit to cover so that the aspect ratio is preserved. Now there's a difference between this section and the other sections. The difference is that the width of this section is 100%, unlike the other sections. So here we can see that the width of the Our Project section is just the width of the wrapper division. But in the Testimonials section we can see that we have the background color which stretches all the way to the edges of the browser. So we have to keep that in mind when designing this section. We need to have a background color for this section. So we need to get out of the wrapper division and then design this section. But all the content inside the section has the width of the wrapper division. So let's go to our source code, and if we scroll all the way up we can see that we have a division called wrapper. This determines the width of our website. So if we scroll down, all these sections are inside the wrapper division. Now here the wrapper division ends, so we have to create the testimonial section after the wrapper division ends. So let's create a section and we'll give it a class name of Testimonials Section. Now all the content inside our section have the width of the wrapper. So let's add the wrapper division right here, and all the content will be inside this wrapper division. So the first thing we need to have is this heading. So let's go ahead and type h2 and we will type testimonials, and then we have this testimonial. So we'll create a division called testimonials container for all these testimonials. So we have 3 testimonials. So let's go ahead and create a division called testimonials container, and then we'll have one more division called testimonials for all the testimonials, and in that we'll have the individual testimonials. So let's create a division with the class of testimonial. Now each of the content inside the testimonials is a slider. So we'll create a division with the class of slide container, and in that we'll have the content. So we'll have a division with the class of content, and in that we'll have the paragraph. So let's copy this text and we'll paste it right here, and then we have the name and the company. So let's copy this, and after the paragraph, let's create a division with the class of name, and in that we'll paste the name and the company name. Now let's go to our website and see how it looks. So here we have the heading, and then we have the content, and we have the name and the company name. But if you go to the design, we can see that the name has a font weight of bold. So we can do that in the HTML itself. So let's go over here and add a tag called strong, and we'll include the name inside the strong tag. And now we can see that the name is bold and the company name is normal. And then lastly we have the image. So let's go outside the name division, and outside this content division, here we'll create the image tag. So we'll type img, and in the sources we'll type images/testimonial1.png. So there's our first image. Alright, that's it with the first testimonial. Now let's copy this testimonial division from here, and we'll paste it 2 more times. Alright, now let's change the image and the details. So for the second one we'll have testimonial2.png, and for the third one we'll have testimonial3.png. Now let's copy the names from Figma. So this is the first one. Here we'll just paste the name and the company name, and for the name we will have strong tag for making it bold, and lastly we have this name right here. So we'll just copy this and paste it over here. Alright, that's it with all the 3 testimonial slides. So let's go back to our web page, and here we can see all the content. Now next we need to have the next and the previous arrows. So for that, let's go over here to our code, and after the testimonials division we will have the 2 images for the left and the right arrows. So we'll create a span with a class of slider prev, and in that we'll add the image. So images/left arrow.svg, and we'll just copy this and paste it once more, and here we'll type right arrow. Alright, that's it with the testimonial section. So let's have a comment, and end of testimonial section. Now let's add some styling to our testimonial section. So let's go to style.css, and I will create a comment. Now first of all we'll style the slide container division, and we'll set the display to flex. So now we can see that the content is on the left and the image is on the right, and we'll set justify content to space between, so that both these elements are to the extreme left and to the extreme right. And then we'll give a width of 800 pixels, and we'll also center it. So we'll type margin 0 auto. Now let's style the content inside slide container. So I'll type slide container content, and we'll set a padding of 8 pixels and 24 pixels. Now let's style the name and the company name. So if you go to the design, we can see that we have a background color over here. It is the dark background color, and the text is in the light background color that we have set in our CSS variables. So let's go over to our style.css, and here we'll type testimonial dot name, and we'll set a background color of var dark color, and the color of the text to var light color, and then we'll set a padding of 8 pixels and 24 pixels. So let's see how it looks right now. Now we have width of 100% because it is a division and it has a display of block. So we need to change it to inline block so that it doesn't take the 100% width. So we'll type display inline block, And if you go to the design, we can see that we also have a margin. So we'll have a left margin of 16 pixels. So here we'll type margin left 16 pixels. Now let's style the slider prev and slider next, these images right here. Now we'll set the position of those images relative to the testimonials container division. So first of all, let's go ahead and type testimonials container, and we'll set the position to relative. And now here we can go ahead and type slider prev and slider next. I think we haven't changed the class to slider next in our HTML, so let's go back. Alright, here we will type slider next, and here we will type position absolute. Now we'll set a top position to some value so that it feels like it is in the center. So I have calculated this beforehand, and I found that 68 pixels was almost the right amount. So here we can see the arrow. Now let's also give a box shadow, and let's go to our Figma design, and let's copy the box shadow from here. So just copy this box shadow and paste it over here. And it's also round in shape, so we have to set the border radius to 50%. So we'll type border radius 50%. Now when we hover over this, we need to have the pointer icon. So let's set the cursor to pointer. Now when we hover over this, we have a different icon. Now both slider next and slider prev are in the same location. Now we need to change the slider next to the right. So here we will type slider next, and we'll set the right position to 0. So now we can see the left and the right arrows. Alright, that's it with the CSS. Now let's make this slider work. So for that, we'll be using a library called glider.js. Now just search for glider.js in Google, and you'll find this website. I'll also leave the link of this website in the description below. Now just go ahead and download the file. So we can see that we have a zip file downloaded. Now this is the zip file that we just downloaded. So let's go ahead and extract it. And we need two files from this, the JavaScript and the CSS files. So we'll just copy these two files, glider.min.js and glider.min.css, and we'll paste it over here. And now we can just delete the zip file and this folder. These are just the two files we need. So let's go to our VS Code, and let's go to the HTML. Now first of all, let's add the link of the CSS in the head section. So here we'll type link, and we'll just type glider min CSS, and then we'll add the JavaScript link. Now just before the main.js, we will add the link of our glider.js. So we'll type script src, and here we'll type glider.min.js. Now for glider.min.js to work, we need to create a new glider object. So let's go ahead and create a script tag, and we'll add some JavaScript over here. So we'll type new glider, and in parentheses you have to type the container of the sliders. So if you scroll up, we can see that testimonials is the container of our slides. So we have to reference that over here. So we'll just type document.querySelector.testimonials. Now for the next argument, we need to have a function, and here you can have different options for your slider. You can reference the glider.js website for this if you want to have more options, but I'll just show you the necessary ones for our website. So the first one is slides to show. So this is how many slides we want to show at once. So we'll have just one slide at once. The next one is the class of the arrows. So we'll type arrows, and inside another object we need to type the names of the arrows. So for prev, we have this class name called slider prev. So we need to add that over here. So we'll just type in quotes dot slider prev, and for next we have slider next. So now let's go back to our home page and see whether it works. And we can see that the first slide is being shown. Let's click on the next arrow and we can see the next slide and the next slide over here, and the previous arrow also works. So now we'll also add dots over here so that the visitor can click on any of the dots and go to that slide. It is really easy to do this using glider.js. We just have to create a division and reference that division over here in the glider object. So let's go over here. After the span, we'll create a division and we'll also give it a class of dots container, and we'll set the role to tab list, and in this we'll create a division with the class of dots. Now we just need to tell the object that we have a division called dots over here. So we just type dots, and for that we have a division called dots. So that's it for the navigation dots. Let's go back to our website, and here we can see that the navigation dots are being displayed. Let me just add some content down here so that we can see the section correctly. Alright, so here we have the navigation dots. We can click on any of these dots and go to that slide. Now let's see which is the next section we need to design. So if you go to the Figma file, we can see that we have the contact us section. It is a really simple section, so let's go ahead and start by writing the HTML. So let's go to VS Code and let's remove these H1s. So after the comment, we will start writing the markup of the contact us section. So the contact us section has a width of the wrapper, so we need to include that inside the wrapper division. So let's type wrapper over here, and in that we'll create a section with a class of contact section, and in that we'll have a heading, and the heading is contact us. So this is how it looks. Let's create a form element, and for the action we'll just type hash for now, and in that we'll create two groups, one for the name and the email and the other for this message. So we'll create a division with the class of group, and we'll have an input of type text, and we'll have a placeholder, and we'll just type name over here, and we'll just duplicate this line of code, and the next placeholder will be email. And then we'll have another group, so we'll create a division with the class of group, and in this we'll have a text area because we have multiple lines of text. So we'll type text area, and here we'll add a placeholder, and we'll just type your message. And then lastly we have the button, so here we'll type a, and we'll give it a class of button, and it's a button with the cyan color, so we'll just type cyan over here for the class, and here we'll type send message. So this is how our contact section looks right now. So let's go ahead and add a comment over here, end of contact section, and let's go to our CSS and start styling this. Now here we'll create a style for all the input fields, so we'll type input of type text and text area. Now let's see what are the stylings we need to add. So let's go to our Figma file and double click over here, and let's see what is the padding over here first of all. So double click on the name. So we have a padding of 15 or 16 at the top and bottom, and 30 for left and right. So let's add a padding of 16 pixels and 30 pixels. Now let's see the styling of this rectangle. So we'll select it, and we'll go to code, and we have the light background color, we have a border, and we have box shadow and border radius. So these are the CSS we have. So let's copy border radius and box shadow from here and paste it over here, and for the border we have 1 pixel solid of the dark color, and for the background we have the light color. So let's set background to var light color and border of 1 pixel solid var dark color, and let's set the font family to Roboto, and let's see how it looks right now. Now we need them to fill the whole width. So we'll first of all go ahead and style the group. So we'll type contact section group and we'll set the display to flex. And for each of these we will set a flex of 1. Now when you set the flex to 1, it will take up the maximum amount of width it can have. So here we can see we have the correct width. Now we need to have some spacing between these input fields. So let's go to our Figma file and see what is the spacing. So here we have 32 pixels between these two input values, and between these two we have 36 pixels. So we'll set a margin bottom of 36 pixels. Now between these two we have a gap of 32 pixels. So let's give this a margin right of 16 pixels, and for this we will have a margin right of 16 pixels. So here we will type input of type text, nth of type 1, and we'll set a margin right of 16 pixels, and I will just copy this. And for the second input element we will have a margin left of 16 pixels. Alright, I think that's it with the contact section. Now before starting with the footer, let me just add one line of CSS to the button. So let's go to the button. This is where the styles of the button are. Now if you go to our website, you can see that there is not a lot of margin between this button and the text area. Now if we add margins to these buttons or the elements above it, it may not work well because these buttons are basically anchor tags, and anchor tags are inline elements. So let's go ahead and change this to an inline block. Alright, now we can see that there is enough margin between the button and the other elements. Alright, now let's go ahead and start with the footer. So let's go to index.html, and after the end of the contact section, let's start with the footer. So if you go to the Figma design, we can see that footer has the full width of our design, but the content inside the footer has a width of the wrapper. So first of all, let's add a footer tag over here, and in that we'll have the class wrapper. So now everything inside this footer will have the width of the wrapper division, but we can add the background color to the footer and all the content will be inside the wrapper division. So in the wrapper division we'll create one more division called footer container. That's because we'll be having these elements one next to the other, and we'll be using display flex for that. So we need to have a container division to add the display flex property. So let's go ahead and first of all add the logo. So let's add a division with the class of logo, and in that we'll have the img tag, and here we'll type images/logo light.svg. That's because this is the light colored logo, and I have given the name logo light to this svg. So now if we go to our website, we can see that the logo is not being displayed because the color is white and the background is also white. Alright, next we have these navigation menus over here. So let's create a division with the class of footer nav, and in that we'll have an S3, and we will type our services, and then we have these services. So for that we will add an unordered list, and in that we'll have list items, and in that we'll have anchor tags, and here we will have these text. So I'll just quickly add these links to our design. Alright, our first footer nav is done. Now we have one more over here, so let's copy this and paste it over here, and the next one is about us, and then we have these links, so I'll just add them. Alright, we are done with the second footer nav as well. Now the next thing is these social media icons. So let's create one more division with the class of footer nav, and we have the heading get social, and for the social media icons we'll create a division with a class of footer social, and in that division we'll have the anchor tags, and then we'll have the images inside that. Now in place of the hash you can type the URL of your social media account. Alright, so the first image is Facebook, so I'll type images Facebook logo .png, and let's copy this image 2 more times. And we have Instagram and Twitter. And after this footer social division we will have a paragraph, and we'll type this email ID over here. Alright, now the last thing we need to have is this message right here, so I'll just copy this, and just before the footer we will add a paragraph, and we'll give it a class of copyright, and we'll just copy this text over here, and we'll also add @copy:2020 for the copyright symbol. So let's open our website and see how it looks right now. So here we can see we have the logo right here. It cannot be seen right now because of the color, and then we have these footer navs over here, and we have this email ID and this message over here at the bottom. Now let's go ahead and style this. Before that, let's just add a comment end of the footer, and let's go to style.css, and let's create a new comment. And first of all we'll style the footer tag, and we'll give a background color of dark, and we'll set the color of all the text to the light color, and we'll set a margin top of 100 pixels because all these sections have margin tops of 100, and we'll also give a padding bottom of 30 pixels. Now let's also set the color of these anchor tags to white, and we'll also remove the underlines. So we will type footer A, and we'll set the color to var light color and text decoration to none. Now we'll show the underlines when we hover over these anchor tags. So here we'll type footer A : hover and text decoration to underline. So now when we hover over these we have the underlines. Now if you go to the Figma design we can see that all these elements are one next to the other. So let's style the footer container, and we'll set the display to flex and justify content to space between, so that it will have even space between all the elements. All the elements are one next to the other, and we have even spacing between all of them. Now let's also add a padding. So if you go to the Figma design and if you select one of these, we can see we have a spacing of 102. We'll just round it to 100 pixels. So here we will type padding of 100 pixels for the top, 0 for the right, 32 pixels for bottom, and 0 for the left. Now this GTCoding logo is at the top. Now we want to center it vertically, so let's target that. We'll type footer container dot logo, and we will align self to center. So here we can see the logo is centered vertically. Now let's style the unordered list. So we'll type footer container UL, and let's see what is the spacing between this UL and the heading. So we can see we have a spacing of 23 pixels. We'll just change it to 24. So we'll type margin top of 24 pixels, and we'll also get rid of these bullets and also the padding. So I'll type padding 0 and list style to none. Now let's style the list items. So let's go ahead and type footer container ULLI, and we'll give a margin of 16 pixels for top and bottom, 0 for left and right. I think it will look good if we add more margin between the UL and this heading. So let's change this to 30 pixels. Alright, now it looks fine. Alright, now let's style the footer social division. So here we'll type footer container footer social, and we'll set a margin of 30 pixels for the top, 0 for right, 24 pixels for bottom and 0 for the left. And we'll also remove the underline that we see over here at the bottom. That is because the images are inside an anchor tag. And then we'll also set a margin between these icons. So if you go to our Figma design, we can see that we have a spacing of 30 pixels. So let's go ahead and here we will type footer container, footer social, A, and we'll set text decoration to none, and we'll set the margin to 0 for top and bottom and 15 pixels for left and right. Now we are setting a margin of 15 pixels even though we have a spacing of 30 pixels in our Figma design. That's because we have margin right of 15 pixels and margin left of 15 pixels. So both of them add up to 30 pixels of spacing. Now we want to remove the margin left of the first element. So let's go ahead and here we will type footer container, footer social, A colon first child. So it will select the first anchor tag inside footer social, and we'll set the margin left to 0. Alright, now it looks fine. Now when we hover over these images, we want it to increase in size a little bit. So let's go ahead and type footer container, footer social, A img colon hover, and we'll set the transform to scale 1.2. Now we can see when we hover over these, the size changes. We'll also add a smooth transition. So for that we'll go ahead and target the img. So footer container, footer social, A img, and we will add a transition of 500 milliseconds. So now it works fine. Now the last thing to style is this line over here. So we'll just text align it to the center. So I'll just type copyright and text align it to the center. So that's basically it with the footer of our one-page website. Alright, first of all, let's fix an issue that we have with this navigation menu. We can see that it has moved up, and it was not how we designed it earlier. Now the position has changed because we set the display of the anchor tags to inline block for us to have the margins over here in the last video. So let's go to our source code, and let's go to style.css, and if we scroll down, we can see this is where we had written display inline block for our buttons. Now we don't want display inline block to be applied to the navigation menu. So let's go over here and cut this line of code from here, and we will add display inline block to all the buttons inside a section. So we'll tap section a.btn, and we'll paste the line of code right here. Alright, so now we can see that the anchor tags are working fine, and we have the margins over here as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the navigation menu. The first thing we need to do is we need to set the href for our anchor tags. So if you go to the HTML, we can see for the href we have written hash. Now if you want the user to be taken to a different website, then you can just type the URL of the website over here. For example, if you type google.com, then the user will be taken to google.com if he clicks on the about link. And if you want the user to be taken to another page of our own website, then we can name the page over here, for example, about.html. Or if it is inside any directory, you can just type the name of the directory over here, / the name of the page. But in our case, we want to navigate to a section of the same page. So for that, we will use IDs. So what you can do is you can just type hash over here and write the name of the ID. For example, if you create an ID called about, then you can just type hash about, and then you can add ID about to whichever section you want the user to be taken to. So let's go over here to the about section, and let's add an ID, and we'll type about. Alright, so let's go to our website and see whether it works. So let's click on about, and we can see that we are taken to the about section. So we'll do the same with all the other sections. So let's go over here, and for the project section we will add an ID, and we'll call it projects. And then for the testimonial section we will add an ID, and we'll type testimonials over here. And then we have the contact section, Alright, so now let's update the anchor tags. So here we have projects, then here we have testimonials, and then here we have contact, and even for the get started button we will have contact, and then for the logo of our website we will just type hash because it will take us to the top of our page. Alright, so let's go ahead and test whether it works. So let's click on our projects. We have a typo over here, so let's change this to our projects. Alright, so let's click on our projects and testimonials, contact, get started. Alright, so everything is working alright. Alright, now the next thing is to add smooth scrolling. So whenever we click on any of these menu items, we want to navigate to that section smoothly. So for that we'll go to our CSS and we will add a style to the HTML, and here we will type scroll behavior and we'll set it to smooth. Right, now let's go to our website and see whether it works. So let's click on our projects and we get smoothly taken to that section. Alright, now the last thing to do is add the active class to different menu items. So for example, if you are in the our project section, the active class, that is this red border over here, should be under the our projects menu item, and if you go to the testimonials section, it should be under the testimonials menu item. So for that we'll be using JavaScript. So let's go ahead and go to the main.js file, and if you go to the index.html, we can see that we have already linked our main.js file over here. So let's go over here and we'll be using something called intersection observer for this. So what we can do with intersection observer is that we can know when an element is on the screen and when it is out of the screen. So for example, if the contact section is out of the screen, then we know that it is not here, and when it comes into the screen, the intersection observer lets us know that the contact section is in the viewport, and then you can set different actions to that. So let's go ahead and see how it works. So the first thing we need to do is create an intersection observer object. So we'll type const observer. This is the name that we'll give for the observer, and we'll set it equal to new intersection observer, and we'll have two arguments over here. One is a callback function, so we'll create a function called add active class, and the next is an object with the options. So for that we'll create an object with the name of options. Now the next thing is to observe the elements. So we want to observe all the sections. So these are all different sections, and we want to observe them and see whether they are on the screen. So first of all, let's reference all the sections. So we'll just type const sections, and we'll set it equal to document dot query selector all. So here we will reference all the sections. So we'll type section over here. Now all our sections will be stored inside this sections constant. Now the next thing is to observe all the sections. So we'll use a for each loop for this. So we'll type section dot for each, and here you have to create a callback function. So we'll just give an argument called section, and here we will type observer dot observe, and we'll observe each of the different sections. So what we're doing over here is that we are going through each of the sections inside this sections constant, and then for the individual sections we are calling it section and using this observer object and observing each of the different sections. Alright, now let's go ahead and create the options object. So we'll type const options equals, and we'll just leave it blank for now. Now we'll create this callback function called add active class. So we'll type const add active class. Now for the callback function of an intersection observer, we need to have two arguments over here. One is for the entries and the other is for the observer. So we'll just name them entries and observer. Now since we have a number of entries, we will use a for each loop to loop through all the entries. So here we'll type entries dot for each, and here we will type entry, and now we can access each of the individual entry by just using this entry variable over here. Now to check whether any of the entry is on the screen, we can just use an if condition, and we can type entry dot is intersecting, and we'll test whether it is working by just typing console.log, and we'll type entry.target. So this will show us which of the entry is on the viewport right now. So let's go to our website and let's right click over here and click on inspect, and let's go to console, and here we can see that first we have the about section and then we also have the project section. If we scroll down, we can see the testimonial section is being displayed over here. If we scroll down again, the contact section, and if we scroll up, the about section is being displayed. So now we can use this technique to add active class to each of these different menu items. So let's go ahead and here first of all we'll just comment this line of code, and let's create a new variable, and we'll name it current active, and this variable will be used to know which of the menus is active right now. So let's type document.querySelector, and we will type desktop nav a.active. So right now if we go to the HTML, we can see that the first menu item is active. So we have a class of active over here. So right now we have the first menu item inside this variable current active. Now we have to add the active class to whichever section is entering the screen. Now before adding the active class to any other menu item, we need to first remove the active class from the current active element. So let's type if current active. So this will check whether any of the elements has the active class. So if it is the case, then we will type current active.classList.remove active. So this will remove the active class from the current active. So basically in our case, the active class from the about menu item will be removed. Now we need to add the active class to the current section which is visible on the screen. So for that we'll create a new variable and we'll call it new active, and we'll set it equal to document.querySelector. Now what we'll do is we'll get the ID of the entry that is on the screen. So for example, if we are on the testimonial section, then we'll get the ID of this section. So if you go to the index.html file and if we scroll down, we can see for the testimonials section we have an ID of testimonials, and this is the same ID that we had given over here. So now we can make a connection between the menu item and the section. Now here in our JavaScript, we will get the menu item which has the same href as the ID of the current section. So if you are in the testimonial section, we will get the menu item which has the href of the ID of this section. So the ID of this section is testimonials. So we will select the menu item with the href of testimonials, and then we will add the active class to this. So in our JS, we will use template literals for this, because we'll also be using this entry variable in our string. So here we will type .desktop nav, and in square brackets we'll just type href equals hash. So here we can see we have href equals hash, and then here we have the ID. So we are getting the ID from the entry. So here we will just type $symbol, and we can just add a variable over here. So we'll type entry.target, which will give us the current section, and then we'll get the ID attribute from that. So we'll type get attribute, and in parentheses we will type ID, and we also need to add double quotes over here before the hash symbol. So if you go to the index.html, we can see we have double quotes. So here we will type double quotes, and we will end it after this variable. Alright, so now new active has the menu item which is connected to the current section. So now the only thing we need to do is add the active class to this new active element. So we'll type new active.classList.add active. Alright, so now let's go to our website and see whether it works. So we have the active class in about right now. Let's scroll down and see whether the active class is being applied to the our project section. So we have the active class applied to the our project section, but we also have the active class in the about section. We'll figure that out. Alright, the active classes are being added, but the previous ones are not being removed. So let's go to our JS, and here we have a typo. We need to add dot over here because it is a class name. So let's test it once more. So let's scroll down, and we can see when we are at our project section, the our projects menu item is active. Let's scroll down, and then we can see the testimonial section is active, and then the contact menu item. Now we can see that the active classes are being added too early. So if we scroll down, and whenever we see even a little bit of the our project section, the menu item gets activated. So for that, we'll use some options inside the intersection observer. So here we can have threshold, which specifies when the action should happen. So we'll type threshold, and we can have values from 0 through 1. So I'll just type 0.8 over here. And here for the if condition, we will add one more condition, and we'll check whether entry dot intersection ratio is greater than or equal to 0.2. So these are the values that I came up with for the intersection ratio and the threshold after a lot of testing. We need to remove the semicolon from here. You can go ahead and change these values and get different results. So just stick with the values which you feel are the best for your website. So now let's go ahead and test our website. So let's refresh our page, and let's scroll down, and we can see when the our project section is right here, this menu item is active. Let's scroll down. So everything is working all right. We can even click on any of these menu items, and the active class is being added. Now in our Figma design, we already have a mobile version of our website. So this is how it looks. This is the header section, and the our client section, where the logos are divided into 2 rows, and the about us section, here we have the text on the top and the image at the bottom, and all the projects are placed one below the other, and the testimonials also has a different layout, and then the contact section, all the fields are one below the other, and then lastly we have the footer. So we have changes to be made in every section of our web page. So let's go to our source code. Now we will use media queries in CSS to make this website responsive. So for that, we have to set a maximum width for our window. Now if you want to see the width of our window right now, in Chrome you can just right click over here and click on inspect, and then just minimize this. Now whenever you change the size of the window, the dimensions of the window are displayed on the top right of the screen. Now for the mobile version of our website, we will set the maximum width to 650 pixels. So whenever the window of our website is less than 650 pixels, then all the styles that we applied for the mobile version will be applied. So let's just make the width less than 650 pixels for our browser. Alright, so let's scroll up and start with the header. Now let's go to the end of the CSS, and let's add a media query over here. So first of all, we'll add a comment, and to add a media query you have to type @media, and in parentheses you can type max width of 650 pixels. Now whatever style you specify over here inside this section will be applied to our website if the window size is less than 650 pixels. So let's just check it out by just typing star to select everything, and we'll just set display to none, and we can see that everything has disappeared. Now if we increase the size of this window, when our page is greater than 650 pixels, this code is not being applied. So our media query is working. Now the first thing we'll do is we will style the wrapper. So we'll type wrapper over here, and we will remove all the padding of the wrapper. So we'll just type padding 0, and now we can see we don't have any padding. Now we'll also set the width of the wrapper to auto. Right now it is set to, let's scroll up and let's see what it is set to. Right now it is set to 1152 pixels. So now here we can see in our website we can scroll horizontally. So we don't want that in our website. So let's set the width of our wrapper to auto. Now the width is set to auto, so now it will not have a fixed width. Now if you go to the Figma design, we can see that the image is not visible on the mobile version. So let's go ahead and remove the right part of our header section. So here we will type hero container right, and we'll set the display to none. Now we can see that the image has disappeared. The next thing is that we don't have the menu items displayed here on the mobile version. Instead we have this icon. So let's go over here and we will type desktop nav dot menu items, and we'll set the display to none. Now let's set the width of this desktop nav. So if we go to our Figma design, and let's zoom in a little bit, and let's see what is the spacing between the edge and this nav. It is 7. We'll just set it to 8 to be consistent with our design. So here we will type desktop nav. Now we need to set the width to 100% minus 8 pixels over here on the left and 8 pixels on the right, which is 16 pixels in total. So for that we'll use a calc, and we'll type 100% minus 8 plus 8, 16 pixels, and then we'll give a margin left of 8 pixels. We can also decrease the size of this logo a little bit. So let's type desktop nav logo img, and let's see what should be the height. We'll set it to 30 pixels initially. I think we'll just increase it to 36 pixels. Alright, I think 36 looks fine. Alright, now the next thing is that we need to have the icon over here on the right. So we have to go to the index.html file, and here in the desktop nav division we'll create a new division with the class of menu icon after this logo division. So here we'll type menu icon, and in that we'll have the image. So we'll type img, and for the image I have given a name of menu icon. Now we can see that the menu icon is being displayed over here. Now before styling the menu icon for our mobile version, we have to first of all remove it from the desktop version, because since we added this in our HTML, it will be displayed in the desktop version as well. So here before our media queries we will type desktop nav dot menu icon, and we'll set it to display none for the desktop version. Now it won't be displayed on a desktop version, but we want it to be displayed on a mobile version. So let's go to the bottom over here and we'll type desktop nav menu icon, and we'll set the display to block, and also the cursor to pointer, so that when we hover over this we have this pointer icon. Now let's add a padding to our desktop nav. So here we will type padding of 0 pixels for top and bottom, and 30 pixels for left and right. I think it would be better to add some top and bottom paddings as well. So we'll just change this to 4 pixels. Alright, that looks fine. Now let's focus on these polygons. Now we need to remove the last polygon. So here we will type hero container dot polygon 3, and we will set it to display none. And then for polygon 1 and 2, I will just set some left and top values. So I just calculated this beforehand. So I'll type polygon, and here we will type left of 32 pixels and top of 150 pixels, and I will just copy this for polygon 2, and for polygon 2 we will have left of 300 pixels and top of 280 pixels. Now let's add a padding left to this left section over here. So he will type hero container dot left, and we will set a padding left of 50 pixels, and we'll also change the font size of these. So if you go to the Figma design and if you double click over here, and here we can see for the paragraph we have a font size of 18 pixels, and for this heading we have a font size of 30 pixels. So here we will type hero container left P, and we'll set the font size to 18 pixels, and then for hero container left H1 we will set a font size of 30 pixels. Now between the paragraph and the heading we have a lot of gap. So for the paragraph we will type margin bottom of 0. Right, that looks alright. Now let's go to our Figma design and let's see the size of the button. So if we double click over here, we can see the font size of the button is 16 pixels. So let's go over here and we'll type a.btn and we'll set the font size to 16 pixels. Alright, that's it with the header section of our mobile design. Now let's start with the brands section. If you go to the Figma design, we can see that for the brand section, we have divided it into 2 rows. So we need to make some changes in our HTML for this to work. So let's go to the HTML and let's go to the brand section. Now what we'll do is we'll divide these images into 2 divisions. So let's add the first 3 images inside a division with the class of brands line 1. And we'll just cut this ending division after 3 images. And then for the other 2 images, we will have a division with the class of brands line 2. Alright, now let's open the desktop version and see whether everything is alright. So we have some problems over here in the desktop version. So let's fix it first. So let's go to our CSS and let's go to the brands section. Now here let's add the styles for brands line 1 and brands line 2. So we'll type brands section, brands line 1, and we'll set the display to flex and justify content to space around. Now we can add a property called flex to tell it how much space it should take. Now we'll just set the flex of brands line 1 to 2 and this one to 1, so that the left one will have more space than the right one. So we'll type flex 2 and we'll just copy these lines of code for the brands line 2, and for the flex we'll just type 1. So now we can see everything is working alright. So let's go back to the mobile design. So let's scroll down and start with the brand section. So we'll add a comment and we'll type brand section over here. Now first of all we need to remove these rounded corners. So if you go to our Figma design, we don't have rounded corners for the mobile design. So here we'll type brands section and we will set the border radius to 0, and we'll also set a padding of 32 pixels top and bottom and 0 for left and right. Now let's style the H2 inside the sections. So if we double click over here, we can see that the font size is 24. So here we'll type brand section H2, and we'll also target the headings of all the sections. So we'll type section H2 and we'll set the font size to 24 pixels. We'll also change the position of this underline. So we'll type brand section H2 colon colon after and section H2 colon colon after, and we'll set the top position to 100%. We'll also change the width of the underline. So we'll type width to 40 pixels. Alright, that looks fine. And we'll just type transform translate X to set it to the right of our heading. So we'll set it to minus 40 pixels. Now we want the divisions with the classes of brands line 1 and brands line 2 to be one below the other. So for that we'll type brand section brands container and we'll set the flex direction to column. So now we can see that the divisions are one below the other. Now let's change the size of these images. So we'll type brands section brands container img and we'll set the height to 24 pixels. And let's also add some spacing between the first and the second lines. So we'll type brands section brands line 1 and we'll set a padding bottom of 25 pixels. Now we'll set the width of the first division to 100%. So we'll type brands section brands line 1 and width of 100%, and then we'll set the width of the second division, which is brands line 2, to 60%. So we'll type brands section and we'll type brands line 2 and we'll set the width to 60%. So that's basically it with the brands section. So we have designed the mobile version of the header as well as the brand section. So let's start by typing a comment about us. And first of all, let's target all the sections all together. For the section, we will have a padding of 100 pixels for top, but for the sides we need to have padding of 30 pixels. So here we will type padding 100 pixels for top, 30 pixels for right, 0 for bottom, and 30 for the left. So we can see that the padding has been applied. Right, if you go to the Figma design, we can see that the About Us section has a different layout. It has the text on the top and the image at the bottom. So for that we need to change the flex direction. So let's go ahead and type About Section, Section Content, and we'll set the flex direction to column. And now we can see that the text is at the top and the image is at the bottom. Now let's also add some margin to the top of this image, and we'll also remove the left margin of the image. So let's type About Section, Section Content, img, and margin left of 0, and also margin top of 30 pixels. Alright, that's it with the About Us section. Now let's start with the Our Project section. So let's type a comment. Now if you go to the Figma design, we can see that all the projects are laid one below the other. Now here in our styles, we had set the display of the Our Project section to grid. So if we scroll up, we can see for projects we have a display of grid, and we added a grid template columns of 1FR, 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 which means that 3 items will be displayed in one row. Now we just need to change these 3 1FRs to just 1FR. So let's type Projects, Gallery, and we'll set the grid template columns to 1FR. Now we can see that only one project is displayed in one row. Now let's also set a height to our image, because since this is a mobile view, we don't want the height to be too much. So I'll type Projects, Gallery, img, and we'll set a height of 240 pixels. Alright, now let's go to the Figma design, and we can see that in our project section in a mobile version, we just have 4 images right here. But here we can see that in total we have a lot more images. So we just need to display 4 images in our mobile version. So let's go to the HTML, and we will make some changes over here. In the project section, we will add a class to hide certain images. So we'll just display these 4 images at the top, and we will hide these 2 images. So for that we'll give a class to these 2 images, and we'll just give it a class of hide, and in the same way we'll give a class of hide to the last image as well. Alright, so now let's go to our style.css, and we will target the hide class. So I'll type Projects, Gallery, img.hide. So this will target all the images inside the project gallery which has the class of hide, and I will just display it to none. So now let's scroll down, and we can see that just 4 images are being shown. Alright, that's it with the project section. Now let's move to the testimonial section. Now if you take a look at the Figma design, we can see that the testimonial section has the image at the top and the text at the bottom. So let's go over here to the index.html file, and here we can see that we have a division with a class of slide container, and in that we have the content and the image. So we'll make this division display of flex, and then we can add flex direction of column. So let's just do that. So we'll type testimonial slide container, and we'll set the display to flex and flex direction to column, and we'll also set the width to auto, and a padding of 16 pixels top and bottom, and 0 for left and right. Now let's style the image. So I'll type testimonial slide container img, and we'll set the width to 150 pixels. Now let's center it horizontally. So for that we'll type margin 0 for top and bottom, and auto for left and right. Now we want this image to be at the top of the text. So for that you have an option in Flexbox called order. You can add orders to different items in the Flexbox, and the items will be displayed in the order you set in Flexbox. So let's go ahead and type order of -1 over here. And now we can see that the image is at the top. Now let's add a margin top to this content so that we'll be having a space between the image and the content. So we'll type testimonials container content and we'll give a margin top of 50 pixels. I think that's a little too much, so we'll just change it to 30 pixels. Alright, that looks fine. Now we'll also remove the padding that we have over here at the sides of our content, because we had already given a padding of 30 pixels to all the sections. So let's type padding of 0. And I think that's pretty much it with the testimonial section. Alright, now let's style the contact section and we'll add a comment. Now we want all these text fields to be one below the other. So here we will type contact section group and we'll set the flex direction of the group to column. And we need to remove the right margin of the first field and the left margin of the second field. So let's type contact section input of type text colon first child and we will set the margin right to 0. And we'll copy this and paste it down here and we'll type last child. And for that we'll set the margin left to 0. And I think we should decrease the spacing between these text fields. So let's type contact section input of type text and we'll set a margin bottom of 24 pixels, or I think we'll set it to 30 pixels. Alright, that looks fine. Alright, now the last thing we need to style is the footer. Now if you go to the Figma design, we can see that for the footer we have all the elements one below the other. So we need to set the flex direction of the footer container to column. So here we'll go ahead and type a comment and we'll type footer container and we'll set the flex direction to column and we'll set the text align to the center. Now let's set a margin top to the footer nav. So we'll type footer container footer nav and we will set the margin top to 80 pixels. So now we have spacing between these footer navs. Now lastly we need to have the logo at the bottom. So here we can see the logo is at the bottom. So let's target the logo over here, footer container logo, and we'll set the order of the logo to 2. So now our logo has moved to the bottom over here. Now we need to remove the spacing at the top. So for that we will set the padding top of the footer container to 0. So that's basically it with the footer. And with that we have completed the mobile version of our one-page website. So here we can see this is the header, and then we have the Our Client section, About Us section, the Our Project section where we have just 4 projects being displayed, and the testimonial section, the contact section, and the footer. In the desktop version we had these navigation menus right here, but in our mobile version we don't have these menus displayed. So let's create a new navigation menu for the mobile version. So let's go to index.html and here after the wrapper begins, let's create a new division with a class of mobile nav, and in that we'll create an unordered list with a class of menu items, and in that we'll have the list items and an anchor tag, and the first one is about, so we'll type hash about over here and then about inside the anchor tag. We'll just copy this 3 more times. And the next one is our projects, and then we have testimonials, and lastly we have contact. Our navigation menu is displayed here on the top left right here. Now let's position this correctly on our screen. Before that let's also change the title of our web page. So just type GT web design over here. Now we can see that the title has changed. Alright, so let's go to the style.css and let's style this mobile navigation. So here we'll type mobile nav. So let's target the mobile nav division, and we will set the display to flex and set the height to 100 viewport height. Now let's set align items to the center, and we'll set the position to fixed so that it will stay in the same position even if you scroll up or down. And we'll set the top position to 0 and left to 0. Alright, now let's set a background color of the dark color that we had set. So we'll type var dark color. We'll also set the right position to 0 so that we'll have the full width. Now let's position it above all the elements. So we'll type z index and I will set it to 200. Alright, now let's target the menu items class inside mobile nav. And we'll set the list style to none, and we'll also set a padding of 0. Now let's target the list items. So we'll type mobile nav menu items li, and we'll set a margin of 20 pixels top and bottom and 0 for left and right. And let's also target the anchor tags and set the color to the light color, and also remove the underline. And let's also bring it to the center. So here we will type justify content to the center, and we'll also text align the text to the center. And that's it with the design. Now initially we don't want this to be displayed on the screen, so what we'll do is here we will type opacity of 0, pointer events to none so that no one can click on this even if it is not being displayed, and also set the top position to -100%. So we'll remove this top from here. Alright, so now we cannot see the mobile navigation menu. Now we will add a class called active to this mobile nav, and when the class active is added, the mobile nav should be displayed. So here we will type mobile nav dot active, and make sure that you don't have any space between these two classes, because we want the element to have both the mobile nav and the active classes available on it for the following code to work. So here we can see we have this mobile nav division, and we'll be adding and removing active class using JavaScript. And when the class is added, we will execute these lines of CSS. So we'll set the opacity to 1, the pointer events to auto, and also the top to 0. So let's try it once by adding the active class over here. So we'll type active, and we can see that the mobile nav is being displayed. And when we remove the active class, the mobile nav disappears. And one more thing to remember is that you should hide the mobile nav in the desktop version. So if I maximize this, we can see that the mobile nav is being displayed over here. So we need to hide it in the desktop version. So let's go to style.css, and here we have already hidden the menu icon. So let's also hide the mobile nav. Alright, that's it with the styling of the mobile navigation menu. Now let's go to our main.js file and make this menu button work, so that when you click on this menu button, the class of active should be added to the mobile nav, and when we click on it again, the class should be removed. So let's go to main.js file, and let's go over here and we'll add a comment. And for this one, we'll just add a comment of desktop nav. Alright, so first of all, we'll target the menu icon and the mobile nav classes. So we'll type const mobile nav equals document.querySelector mobile nav, and const menu icon equals document.querySelector.menu icon. Alright, now when the visitor clicks on this menu icon, we want to display the mobile nav, and when the visitor clicks on it once again, we want to hide the navigation menu. So here we'll type menu icon dot add event listener, and we'll add an event listener for the click event, and let's add an arrow function over here. So here we'll type mobilenav.classList.toggle and active class. So now when someone clicks on the menu icon, the class will be added, and when the menu icon is clicked once more, the class will be removed. So let's test it out, and we can see that the menu icon is being displayed, and when we click on it again, it disappears. Now we also want to add a smooth transition between displaying the mobile nav and hiding it. So let's go to the style.css, and here we will add a transition of 400 milliseconds. Now let's test it once more, and we can see that we have the transition. Now let's click on any of these nav menus. So let's click on Testimonials. We can see that we have scrolled down to the Testimonials section, but the nav menu has not disappeared. We have to click on this menu icon to hide it. So let's fix that in our main.js. So let's go over here, and we will add an event listener to all these list items, and whenever any one of them is clicked, we want to hide the nav menu, that is, we want to remove the active class. So let's go ahead and first of all target all the list items. So we'll type const mobile menu items, and we'll set it equal to document.querySelector all, because we want to select multiple items, and we'll type .mobilenav.menu items li. Now let's add an event listener to all the list items. So for that we'll use a for each loop. So we'll type mobile menu items dot for each, and in that we'll have a callback function. So we'll just give a variable name of I to access the individual list items, and here we'll type I dot add event listener for click, and let's create an arrow function, and we want to remove the active class. So we'll type mobilenav.classList.remove active. So what we are doing here is that we are going through each of the list items and then adding this event listener for the click event, and whenever someone clicks on the list items, we are executing this line of code, that is removing the active class from the mobile nav. Alright, so now let's test it once more and see whether everything works alright. So let's click on the menu icon, and the mobile nav is being displayed. So let's click on contact, and the mobile nav disappears, and we are scrolled down to that section. So everything is working alright, and let's go back to the desktop version and see whether we have any problems in that. Let's also right click over here and click on inspect and see whether we have any JavaScript errors. So we don't have any. So since we have completed the design of our one-page website, let's go ahead and publish it online. So we'll be using a service called Netlify to publish our website. So just go to netlify.com, and here we can see some information about the website. So Netlify is basically one of the easiest way to host your website online. So just sign up for an account and then log in. Now all your previous websites will be displayed over here, and if you want to add a new website, you just have to drag and drop your site folder over here. So this is our site folder. Let me just add it inside a container folder. So just type main, and I'll just drag all this inside the main. So now we'll just drag and drop this main folder to Netlify. And we can see that our site has been deployed. So this is how fast you can deploy your site on Netlify. Let's go ahead and open this site. We can see everything is working fine. Now the source code of this website will be available in the description below, so you can just check it out. And now let's go ahead and click on domain settings, and here we can go ahead and add a custom domain if you already have a registered domain name, or you can just go ahead and click on edit site name, and you can edit the subdomain over here. So we'll just type gtwebdesign.netlify.app and click on save. And now let's open this URL, and we can see that our website is being displayed. Now the last thing I'll do over here in our website is that we'll make this contact form work. Now with Netlify you have this option of adding contact forms. So whenever someone makes a submission to your contact form, it can be displayed over here in your Netlify dashboard. So let's go to forms and see how it is done. Now here we can see we have a normal form, and then we have a button over here with the type of submit, and the only thing we need to add in our form is this keyword called Netlify. So if we add this to our form, then the form will be submitted to Netlify. So let's go to the source code. So we'll go to the contact form, and the first thing we need is we need to name the contact form. So we'll type name equals GT form, and we'll just remove the action. And the important thing is to add Netlify, and then we need to add names for the input fields as well. So here we'll type name equals name, and name equals email, and for the text area we will have name equals message, and we'll change the anchor tag to a button. So let's type button, and for the button we'll have a type of submit. Alright, now let's open this in our browser and see how it looks. We haven't styled the button element, so let's go ahead and let's go to the CSS, and here for a button and button with the class of button, and for a button cyan we'll type button.btn.cyan, and we also need to remove the border and also add a cursor of pointer. So here we'll type border 0 and cursor to pointer, and we also need to change the font size. So let's change the font size to 16 pixels. Alright, now the button looks alright. Now let's update the source files in our Netlify. So we'll go to deploys, and here we can see deploys for GT Web Design. Now to update our site, we just have to drag and drop the updated folder over here. So let's drag this right here, and our website was updated. Let's go ahead and refresh our page. Now let's submit this form and see whether we get the details in our Netlify account. And let's click on send message, and we already have this thank you message by Netlify. So let's click on back to our site, and let's go to Netlify and click on forms, and here we can see that we have a submission. If I click on that, we have the name, the email ID, and the message. So this is how the forms work in Netlify. Now in the free version of Netlify you have a limited amount of forms that you can get, but if you're getting more submissions from your website, then you can upgrade your plan. Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope that you found this useful, and I will leave the link of the source code in the description of this video. If you found this video useful, please click on the like button, and if you have any questions or feedback, you can write them in the comments below. And also don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.